Hey there, in today's small group, we are going to be talking all about resting well and being renewed, being returned to the purpose that we were created for, being restored and being reconnected, rejoined in with the mission of God. Sounds great, doesn't it? You've probably heard, you may have heard many things, many talks on the Sabbath. You may have read Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. Maybe you have put into place loads of practices to help you do that. But maybe you haven't. Maybe you're new to all of this, and the idea of resting well is a new one, or at least one that you haven't given much thought to. But no matter where you are coming from today, hopefully this will get us going, thinking a little bit more about why we rest well in God and what happens when we do that and what stops us from doing that, so we can remove those things and help us to do it a bit more. So first principle, I reckon most of you get this. Most people understand this. Resting well doesn't just mean sitting on the couch watching Netflix. I don't say that out of judgment. I absolutely love a Netflix series. And I'm not criticizing that for a bit, but that isn't how we rest. That's not what restores us to the purposes of God. It's just quite a good fun, and nothing wrong with entertainment. But I think put entertainment and rest as a separate category in how you think of your life, that might help a little bit. Being entertained is not the same as resting. Let's go to Jesus' words in Matthew 11. Are you tired? Worn out? This is from the Message translation, by the way. The Message translation is not a full translation of the Bible, it's a paraphrase, but I do recognize that every now and again, it's absolutely brilliant. And this is one of the passages that gets used again and again and again. It just relates to people deeply. It's such a good translation. So, are you tired, worn out, burnt out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. So you'll re-find your life. In other words, I'll show you how to take a real rest, says Jesus. Walk with me and work with me and watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Now, if you want a really good passage to just go back to and go over and churn up, or what you could do is, I won't be offended if you just press pause, don't watch the rest of this talk, and read that passage and go over it with a fine-tooth comb. Think about your life. Are you tired? If you're tired, put your hands up. Are you worn out? Are you burnt out religion? Do you find yourself frustrated at the way that religion is going in the world? Perhaps you're not, but perhaps you are. Maybe you're looking at what's happening in America. Maybe you're thinking, what on earth is going on with... It's exciting right now, but also there's alarm bells ringing, and when we see the gospel is spreading, but also where's it going? Who's running it? Who's in charge? What's going to happen? Like, maybe you've got big concerns about religion and how it affects you. So Jesus just says, come to me. 3 of the most important words in the whole Bible. It's his invitation to come and walk with us. Walk with me, work with me. So in other words, don't just sit in church and think about me. This is not just cerebral. Walking is a physical action. Working is a laboring action. It's a hard thing. Do those things with him. Go through life with Jesus. Watch how I do it. Like, observe. There's so many verbs in this passage. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. What an amazing passage that is. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me. Stay in communion with God. Like, don't lose the relationship, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Isn't that ultimately what we want? Freedom. Like, it feels like learning to live freely and lightly. That feels like the game. Like, that feels like the goal, the purpose. If we are able to live freely and lightly, that if you saw an old person who just was free and light, and they were great to be around, would that not feel like they'd arrived in some kind of way? So I think that's a good destination. That's why we rest. And resting doesn't just mean sitting on the sofa. It means working and walking and watching with Jesus. So we are going into the mission of God. He's inviting us into an active rest, inviting us into an active rhythm of working with him and walking with him. In order to do that, we need to spend time with him, to abide with him, like he says, abide with me, and like I abide with the Father. In John 15, live with me. I'm the vine, you're the branches. Like, there needs to be a connection, an in-rootedness into him. This is a day, if we Sabbath, like it says in the Bible, take a day a week to make holy, like a day to get your priorities right, a day a week, whenever that is for you. It may not be a Sunday, by the way. You might have work shifts on a Sunday. You may have to Sabbath in a different way on a different day. Maybe it's a Saturday, a family day, whatever it looks like for you, your friendship groups, people who you know and love. Maybe it's time for you and your own to get some time with you and God. There's no right or wrong for how you do it, but you got to, well, there are some wrong things. There's some wrong ways to do it, but there's multiple ways to get it right. And our lives look different, so I recognize that. So, but this is a day, and it's a day primarily to address the first question that God asks in the Bible. He asks of Adam and Eve, where are you? And that in Hebrew is ayeka. And it doesn't mean where, if you've physically gone, what's your geo code right now? What's your what 3 words or whatever it is? He's not asking that. He's saying, what has happened to this distance that has grown between us? Where are you? Where have you gone? Like, what's happened? What's this cavern between us? There's a problem. And how can we address that balance? Sabbath is a day where we can ultimately address that distance. We can let God say to us, where have you gone? And we can return home to him. And like the prodigal father, like the father in the prodigal son story, he open arm welcomes us. He's just delighted whenever we come home. He's not judgmental. He's not cross. He's not frustrated. He might have things to say to us in due course, but he just wants to welcome us home with open arms. So Sabbath is a day to do that. We've run hard. We've gone hard. We've done all sorts of stuff. We've gone for it. We've made mistakes. We've messed up. We've tried our best. We haven't tried our best. Whatever's gone on in that week. And he's just like, come on home. So it's a day for Ayeka, a day to address where are you, to address the distance between us and God. And as we do that, we get back into his purposes, back into what makes his heart tick. Our heart starts to tick for that as well. And what makes his heart tick? The reconciliation of all people to him, the mission of God, the Missio Dei. So, this is what it says in Isaiah 58, which I think is a great description of what God requires of his people as we try and participate with him in his mission. Is this not the kind of fasting I have chosen for you, to loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and to break every yoke? In other words, to reconcile all people to God. To participate, he could do that. He could do whatever he wants. He's sovereign. He could do it, couldn't he? But he chooses not to. He chooses to join in with us. He waits for us. That's a mystery sometimes, isn't it? You're like, can you just not get on with it, God? Because it needs doing. But he chooses to wait and participate with us in the reconciliation of the world into good relationship with him, in the liberation of the captives and the setting free of the prisoners, in the healing of the sick, in the release of the oppressed. Like, he chooses to wait and do it with us, even though he could do it on his own if he wanted to. So then later on, fast forward to when Jesus is on the earth, Jesus says that somebody asks, teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments. So these 2 things are so crucial because they point to 2 things: our relationship with God and our relationship with people. Our relationship with God we sort out when we have a good Sabbath, when we rest well, and we renew that relationship. We get that right, everything hinges from that. The second thing that hinges, that's why it's the first and the greatest commandment. The second thing that hinges on it is our relationship to other people. And if we get our relationship with God right and look through his eyes at how he sees the world, watch what I do, work with me and walk with me. If we get that right, you see other people the way he sees them, not the way we see them as commodities and whatever, employees or people who do things for us or people who are serving us at the checkout of a supermarket. But you start to see them as amazing, fearfully, wonderfully made creatures that are made in the image of God equally, just as we all are as well. So it starts to shift how we see all people. So that's why the second is so crucial. Love your neighbor as yourself. And then Paul, as he goes through the Gentile world planting churches, embracing cultures of all different types, like what he says, read the New Testament, what he says to each of these churches is different. He doesn't tell them all the same thing. It's not a cookie cutter model of church planting in the New Testament. He doesn't just say, do it all the same way, just follow this leadership pipeline and you'll end up fine. He looks at the culture and goes, what is it in this culture that we can embrace? What's really great? And also, what do we need to absolutely reject? And the things that he absolutely rejects are the things that push us away from doing the first two commandments that Jesus cites when he said that there. So anything that is idolatrous, in other words, what stops you loving the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind? What gets in the way of that? What's idolatrous? And then secondly, what is immoral? And anything that is immoral is a morality is about how we act to other people in a way that's appropriate or inappropriate, right? So it's getting those things right. And Paul basically tolerates a load of variety so long as they get their idolatry and their immorality sorted. That should challenge all of us, I think, because every single one of us have ways in which our idolatry sneaks in. It doesn't just look like worshipping golden calves or whatever, like it does in the Old Testament. It doesn't mean that we've all got a Buddha in our kitchen. That it's not just that kind of idolatry. That's too obvious. Don't let yourself off the hook that easily. It could be that money has become a really big thing for you. It could be that fear of money has a big grip on you, thinking, I don't know if we're going to have enough pension when we retire. And that thought is so pervasive that it gets in the way of making other generous decisions. It could be that your ambition in your career is getting in the way of how you pray. That all you want, like the biggest thing, the thing that you put your most worth into is how your career is developing as opposed to your relationship with God. Maybe it's your reputation and how you see yourself has become an idol. Like there's loads of ways that idolatry can creep in, and it's not just, bowing down in front of Baal. Most of us aren't doing that, right? So we can't let ourselves get off the hook too easily. Where is idolatry taking place in your life? And by the way, it will be in everyone's life. It's not like it's an Old Testament thing. It's an old school thing. Idolatry is everywhere. It could be how you see other people. It could be lust. It could be whatever, right? So that's idolatry. So we need to sort that out in Sabbath. This is a great thing to sort out in Sabbath. If we get that right, then the second bit, love others, love our neighbor. Who is that? It's everyone. So if someone is enslaved on the other side of the world, it matters to me because they're made equal in the image of God, because they're equally his child, just as I am. It just so happens to be that I've been born into the most fortunate 1% or wealthiest 1% on the planet. Well, I didn't do anything to deserve that. I didn't earn that. I didn't you know what I mean? I was just an accident. I was ignorant to that choice. It's just how I was born. So the fact that somebody else is being abused in some kind of sweatshop on the other side of the world should matter to me, because they're my brother and sister made in the image of God, just like I am and you are. Maybe there's a bit more close to home. Maybe there's someone who's being treated badly at work, and at your work, maybe you need to speak up. Maybe it's at your university or in your school, and you need to speak loudly for that person and say, that's not okay, because that person is equal. That person's made in the image of God. That isn't right that that's happening to them. And if it costs me something to say that, then so be it. I'm going to speak up about it. We're all created as God's children. So an example of this, I heard a great story recently of a couple of students who went to Romania on a mission trip during a summer holiday. They went to an orphanage, and that's where they spent most of their time working, serving. And they discovered during that time that there was a local government official who was abusing kids in this orphanage. Obviously, that's not acceptable in the eyes of God. So as they Sabbathed and as they rested well and they went and listened to God, they were like, this just isn't right. Let's read Isaiah 58. And you're like, that we can't just sit here fasting food and hoping everything's fine again. We've got to loose the chains of the injustice and loose the prisoners. Like, we've got to sort this out. The abuse is going on. We've got to go and speak up from it. So they went to that government official and they spoke bravely. This is two female students a few years ago. They spoke bravely to that government official and said, you need to stop doing this. He said, you don't know what you're talking about. They said, you are not a man of God and you're going to lose your job. I declare it, you will lose your job. God will sort this out, and we're fasting and praying that he will do that. He said, I'll kick you out of the country. I'm going to get the paperwork rolling and you'll be removed from the country really soon. Anyway, fast forward a couple of weeks, that guy lost his job and he was kicked out. I don't know the details of how, but a couple of weeks after they said that would happen and started fasting and praying that it would, he did. He lost his job and they came back into the orphanage and they were like welcomed home like heroes and did nothing but point towards Jesus and said it was him who did this. This is just us joining in with what he does. Throughout all of history, this is what God does. He reconciles people into good relationship, and that they were able to do that because they had been freed from the human oppressors who were stopping that relationship thriving. So in what way, you might not be able to do that in an orphanage, but what way are you able to support people who are doing things like that? And what ways are you able to physically do it in your world? Again, don't let yourself get off the hook by going, just be really, well, my response to this will be just to go, it's really good that think other people do that. Like, how are you going to do it in your world? What are you going to do to participate with the reconciliation of all things and all people to good relationship with God? So let's return to the Sabbath. Let's return to rest. Let's get this right. Let's get really honest in our small groups. Talk about what is it physically that gets in the way of us doing this? What are your actual difficulties? Get practical. Be honest. Be vulnerable. Don't try and fix each other's situations. So if someone goes, if I'm honest, I really struggled to put my phone down and to like disconnect from digital stuff on a Sabbath. If they ask for tips and help, okay, but do not volunteer advice unless they do. Or you could always check first, because so often what we need to do in our small groups is just be honest. We know what we need to do, but we just need to be honest and accountable. I just need to say, here, I struggle with this. I need to not do this. I want to start doing this, whatever it is. And then 6 other people pile in with advice, and it actually undoes the accountable moment. So resist the temptation to fix everyone else's problem. Stop pulling the planks out of other people's eye, and let's address the speck that's in our own eye. So let me finish by reading the passage again from when Jesus says, are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burnt out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn how to live freely and lightly. Here's 4 questions for you to discuss in your groups. What one thing could you do to help you Sabbath better? What one thing could you do to help address the injustice of this world? So 2 things. What one thing could you do to Sabbath well? What one thing could you do to address the injustice of this world? And then look at the reverse of that. What stops you Sabbathing well? What stops you addressing the injustice of the world? So you've got 4 questions. I hope you have a great discussion. Over to you.